Anyway, as I mentioned before, this game has its own form of kinesis, only here it's more powerful and allows you to pick up any enemy from the moment you get it. The catch is that it can run out of battery and it only lasts for a few seconds, which is an interesting concept. However, when the battery runs out, regardless of whether you have battery packs in your inventory, the grip will cut out. If you try to pick the enemy back up, then Jacob will automatically use a battery pack to refill the charge, so why couldn't that just be automatic when it runs out so the grab keeps going? In combat, if my grip is low, which is the only time it gets low, by the way, because picking up random items in the world doesn't drain it, then I'm not going to be able to go into my inventory and refill it manually. I'd obviously get hit. So if it gets low and I want to use it, I can't use a battery pack to make sure there's no risk of it running out mid-grab. I have to just let it run out and then pick the enemy back up, which is just a hassle, especially when I throw them just as it runs out and Jacob ends up shooting at nothing instead. And it's made even more annoying if it runs out while I grab an exploder, because now, instead of being at a distance, all I've done is drop a live grenade right in front of me, which is always fun. Oh, and while we're on the subject of using shit from your inventory, why does healing take an age? Today, Silksong is going to be out before you're done. Under normal circumstances, I would accept the argument that it's for immersion, but Jacob uses the batteries from his inventory instantaneously when you pick people back up. Why can't he do the same with medkits? If you don't want me healing in combat, just don't allow me to heal in combat. Yeah, it'd be contrived, but no more or less contrived than Jacob for some reason needing to get down on one knee to heal. Apart from that, I still have a couple more problems with the grip, because it's also unnecessarily limited in its application. You can't pull arm blades off dead evolved enemies, which I can at least understand, because Dead Space does the exact same thing and is kinda known for it, but it's still a little disappointing, especially because this would add an interesting layer of strategy. Maybe now you actually want enemies to evolve, specifically so you can kill them and grab their arm blades to use on other enemies. You also can't grab acid spit out of the air and throw it back with the grip like you also can in Dead Space, which is a missed opportunity if I've ever seen one, since it can already be tough to dodge their acid if other enemies are around, and letting you deal with it like this would give me back some control if I can pass a skill check. Can I grab it before it hits me, and additionally, can I throw it at another enemy before they hit me? Why the devs omitted this, I do not know, since they already have a similar mechanic in place, where you grab exploders and toss them at other enemies. And the Dead Space comparison thing isn't even an excuse this time, because this game has acid spitters, which Dead Space had. And this game was fine with recreating that, so why not let you use grip on their projectiles? Oh my god, it's infuriating. And from here on out, the limitations just get a bit weird. You can grab living enemies, but not dead ones. You can grab boxes, but not the loot inside them. Nor can you grab any loot with the grip, which means if a piece falls just slightly out of bounds, it's gone. Why? Okay, I don't really want the loot he's dropping that bad. I don't care. It's probably going to be like 20 credits or a fucking piece of health. I don't care about the loot, but the fact I can't get it, just irritating. How is this a thing? Why can't I grab loot? Why can't I grab enemies that are dead? Whatever. What's worse is that despite the notable limitations in what you can pick up, your grip is still capable of prioritizing ludicrous targets in the heat of battle. No! Put it down! Do you understand just how bad that is? I see the exploder and the spitter. I wait for them to be decently close together. There are two grabbable items nearby. One is an explosive, the other is a plastic fucking box, and the game picks the box, which slows me down and forces me to panic throw the canister in order to kill the exploder, which is now too close for comfort, instead of getting the both of them with one well-aimed throw. Why is that allowed? Why wouldn't you program the grip with a hierarchy of item importance? Explosives and exploders would obviously be at the top because they can net you multiple kills with one throw. Then maybe acid spitters, followed by other enemies, and then miscellaneous objects. If multiple objects are within the player's reticle, within like a meter of each other, the game should prioritize grabbing them in order of usefulness, not just flip a coin.
I was taking your job from you. I apologize. Why did that need such a fancy animation to crawl through a hole?
This is a kind of superficial problem that I have with quite a few games. I suppose it could fall under pacing issues. I'm only bringing it up because it was noteworthy when I was playing the game. Sometimes developers will put in crawling, shimmying, and balancing sections for no good reason. Sometimes they're purposeful because they actually have consequence, but if they aren't story relevant and they aren't part of the main mechanics, then there's no point in having them so often because there's no engagement here. There's no way to fail these moments, it's just a slight delay for as far as I can tell, no reason. I appreciate when they're used to obscure secret paths or show off enemies in order to build tension, but otherwise, they just slow me down, and this game has quite a few of them to the point where I just started zoning out. Like, is there any reason that this segment needs to be made minutes longer via crouching, crawling, shimmying, and balancing? Why couldn't we just cut all this and let me walk around normally until the required beam section where Jacob falls? And I'm not RP walking here to make this section seem longer. The game has disabled my ability to run. Why? I don't know. If the characters were having a story-relevant conversation, I might understand the devs not wanting you to miss it by running through, but they aren't. This would be a prime opportunity for Jacob and Danny to hash it out, so to speak, and have her finally admit why she hates him so much so they can reach a level of understanding as they navigate through this place. I'd probably still call it boring if the gameplay was the same, but it would at least serve a purpose, but there's so little dialogue here, and the dialogue that is here isn't really that meaningful. This, as it stands, serves no purpose other than to waste my time. And what's even weirder is that this game is full of immersive animations like this that look legitimately great. They're very slow, but they serve to immerse you in the world by watching your character manually do everything. But every now and again the game will have an animation like this. Why not have two different animations for this? If the elevator goes up, Jacob pushes the up button and vice versa. Why have this? What is this? If the goal of all this detailed animation stuff is to immerse me, then what am I doing? I'll just let Mark make my point for me. I don't even need to edit this section.
I have thoughts, though. Before I go, I have thoughts. It's just like it's a trend where everything is trying to be so cinematic. It's almost like the game is an afterthought. Make this crawl section really, really cool with the animation so dynamic and all this stuff. And I'm like, all right, cool. Isn't it funny how the one thing I notice, all those are so nice and whatever, but the thing I notice is that the use animation now stands out as odd. I'm not sure every single interface can be controlled with.
Something's wrong with the elevator. I'm heading down, not up.
I use a button and I'm like, your hand isn't even touching it. You have all these really dynamic, really cool things. Whereas if all those were just like, I crouch through and do the crouching animation, which exists, and I go through a hole without any kind of cinematic nothingness to it, but I notice that. The door being wonky because everything else is so polished. It's like everything puts itself up to a certain standard that anything that doesn't meet it by comparison just looks worse. So it doesn't matter how good it all looks and how detailed it is. When some small thing's out of place, it just stands out all the more.
The game also has a couple of contextual gameplay moments where you get arbitrarily locked off from an area you were just in for no good reason, and this is the worst of the bunch. Because I accidentally entered the scripted shimmy animation during combat and just left all the loot behind. And, this rock is what's preventing me from returning to get it. It's also preventing all those enemies that were just there from reaching me. What is this? A cave-in for ants? If you're gonna have a cave-in kind of moment where something collapses and I can't go back, it might be a good idea to place more than one small boulder in my way. Fucking Mundane Matt would be all over that, and you're telling me Jacob can't just step over it? You're also telling me the enemies can't step over it? The enemies that have just disappeared for some reason? And again, this one is a pretty minor problem, but it's just frustrating. It's just annoying. Having these little bastards hiding in the chests is just ridiculous and minorly irritating to the point I'm convinced they only exist just to piss me off. They die instantly when you do the QTE, they don't poison you, and they do minimal damage to the point I literally don't care if they bite me. If there was a way to tell the difference between normal chests and infected chests, I might compliment it, but I've looked, and there's no difference. I don't even know how they got in there. Did an infected let them in and then close and lock the lid just to, what, troll me? Why are they here? Who thought these up? What developer thought, You know what? You know what's really going to be fun? You know what's going to really get the players into our game? I've got it. These fucking things. Ugh. And they're not random either. They show up at set points throughout the game to the point that I started remembering where they were and ignoring those chests because I don't want to get grabbed. Why would I open them? There's no loot inside. And it's not like Resident Evil 4 where you have to start double knifing things once snakes start showing up. Like, that's a habit the game wants you to adopt. I don't think it's that interesting, but at the very least you can deal with the snake inside easily and get the loot. In Callisto, you just have to play the game, get attacked, memorize it, and then you'll be able to avoid them in a future playthrough. There's no skill involved. I mean, there's not really much skill in the RE4 version, but at the very least, there's a way to avoid getting attacked. Why are you here? Just to be a pain?
What is the purpose of your life? Just to be a pain?
They aren't scary because after the first time they jump you, it becomes entirely formulaic, and even the first time I saw them as more of a threat to be dealt with than a scare. Then, at the end of the game, they put 2 of these chests, one after the other, separated by a single encounter, and genuinely all it did was get on my nerves. It just felt like I'd been cheated out of loot twice in a row. I have no idea why they exist. The only non-joke explanation I can come up with is that late in the story, because Danny gets infected by one, maybe the idea was to have them jump Jacob throughout the game to make that moment feel less arbitrary, which didn't work at all because it still felt immensely cheap that she'd been surviving on her own the whole time, and then just gets randomly infected while we turn our back for a split second. Honestly, Jacob getting jumped by them makes her look even more incompetent, because it happens like 10 separate times and Jacob saves himself every time, but she gets infected by 1. So, if that was the idea with this gameplay mechanic, then I'd say it failed. So, hacking. There is none. That is, there's no hacking minigame to speak of here, you just kind of pull panels right off the wall and cut whatever's inside, and that seems to always do exactly what you wanted, instead of causing some kind of critical system failure. I only bring this up because it feels like they took the idea of hacking from Dead Space 2 without the character context that justified its existence, and as a result, it attacked my immersion every time I did it. The hacking minigame in Dead Space 2 works without affecting immersion because Isaac is an engineer, with a presumably intimate knowledge of these systems, which is why he's able to bypass them like he does. They also obscure his hand, which is a small but important detail. You never see what Isaac is doing, you just have to infer that whatever he's doing, it's working. Here, we can see Jacob just cut what I can only assume is vital wiring, and the door just opens for no reason, which reminded me thoroughly that I was playing a game every time it happened because it made no sense. I honestly think the fix is to just cut this out. Why not have more doors around the facility working? After all, this place only went to shit in the past few hours, and it is a prison. It must be designed to withstand prison riots, right? Also, it would speed up the game a little, and narratively, you could easily justify the doors all being open by the prison director overriding the lockdown, because he wants the infection to spread in order to find his alpha, which is the villain's main goal, by the way, spoilers. He wants a prime specimen from which he can evolve humanity, because that's a really original idea that's never been done before. Cough cough, complete global saturation. And branching off from the hacking thing, as far as the QTEs in this game go, the game uses them a little oddly. They work as you'd expect in combat, with you having to mash a button whenever you get grabbed, but outside of combat, QTEs are weirdly inconsistent in how they work. Certain events require a QTE like forcing doors open, which, hilarious by the way, given how massive they are, but then other events which require a similar effort, like prying open the hacking panels or turning these valves, don't. I'm not saying that I want QTEs on those events because that would just be annoying. I'm saying if you don't have them here or here because they're annoying, then why do you have them here? They just feel obligatory, and as I said in the previous section about hacking, you could just have more doors open so I don't waste time doing this as much. It's not like there's a minigame here like in Dead Space 2, it's just meaningless button mashing.
I just gotta say, in the grand scheme of things, I know it's a common thing in a lot of games, that when you open a door, there's like some extra element to it. Are there people out there that are thrilled by that moment? That when you get to a door and it's like, spam E on this to put effort in, I'm like, I'm connected to the game! Oh, I feel like I'm there! Does anyone actually do that? I don't mean to shit on this in particular, but it's just like a common thing. It's like, I'm so used to, you go up to a door, you press E, it open. Is it better? Maybe it felt better. I think it felt a lot better.
Things like this and the Dead Space melee frustrate me more than normal issues because they are so easily fixed. But at the very least, Dead Space's melee is avoidable as a system. You can't avoid these QTEs no matter what you do, and they're just bad. Games, just please stop doing this. Just in general, games, all of them, every single one, stop this. Doors were not meant to be opened with QTEs. They've played us for absolute fools. This game also has a severe problem with directing the player to where they need to go, which is honestly impressive considering how linear the game is. Multiple times early in the game, I ended up running back and forth between two possible paths over and over and over again, progressing a little further each time in the hopes that one of them would lead to a dead end, so I'd know which is the story path and which led me to loot and secrets. The locator was a fucking godsend in Dead Space because with the press of a button, you immediately knew if you were headed to the story or headed to secrets. This game has no locator, no map, no minimap, and no compass. The next best thing would have been to have Elias, who can talk to you over comms, drop a hint as you go down the correct path. You know, maybe he calls up and says, that'll take you where you need to go, but if you're interested, I'll hide some stuff in the showers that you might find useful. That would immediately tell you, oh, okay, I know where to go to leave this area now. Instead, I felt lost for a few hours at the beginning of the game, and I only managed to get my bearings consistently, not because the game got better and started accounting for this problem, but because I eventually noticed the secret paths have locked doors next to them that signify they are secret because that's where you come out of at the end of the path. But if I hadn't figured that out, I would have just given up, because I can't handle having to reload minutes of progress to go back before a point of no return just to get some loot. And some of these secret paths even have what appear to be points of no return in them, only for them to eventually loop back around to the main path. Figuring this out early game was immensely frustrating because I go to what I think is the secret, only to realise I've dropped down somewhere I seemingly can't come back from, so I reload, believing that must be the main path, only to waste a bunch of time and have to reload again when I accidentally go the right way. Absolutely infuriating, and this should be a solved issue, but so many games have it. What is especially funny is that the game takes the complete opposite approach with some areas of the game, and the outside section is by far the funniest. Once you get outside, it's very linear, but just to make sure you definitely don't get lost on the only path you can take, at one point the devs do this. Oh my god, really? I love this arrow so much. Anyone who plays games has seen the yellow paint jokes, but this is another level. It's hilarious, both on a narrative and meta level. Literal yellow arrows telling you where to go on an already highly linear path, as if you're actually that stupid. Like, it's okay, guys. You do not have to accommodate the stupidest people in the room. They can just be lost, and it's fine. They are not who you should be looking to develop your games around.
Okay.
And we all have DSP moments every now and again, but I am not regularly this stupid, nor is anyone else. Just let me find my way. This is an 18+ game. I'm not a child. Well, not physically at least. Mentally and emotionally, that's another story. Also, narratively, the very idea that someone else in these temperatures on a rickety bridge that has almost collapsed with monsters everywhere decided to come out here with a bucket of yellow paint and a brush and slather the bridge in it is endlessly amusing to me. What mad lad did this, and how did their paint not freeze in the bucket? You know, it feels very good to be almost done talking about the game portion of this game. The only things I really want to mention at this point are the weird quirks and bugs I ran into playing this game. There's just a few visual bugs that kept popping up, some of which persisted across my playthroughs, like this hallway. It doesn't seem strange, but once you take a few steps forward, the hallway and the adjacent room fill with fog, and an invisible guy is released. If you kill him, you can go into the next room and deal with what's there, but if you go the way you're supposed to go, through the vent and open the door, if you then run back around and enter the hallway again, all the fog is gone and it doesn't return, which makes the next room easy and no longer creepy. It's just a nonsensical visual bug that I would have expected had been ironed out by now, but no. And in case you're wondering if it just dissipated naturally over time, the fog does not dissipate naturally no matter how long you wait. It just disappears. Beyond that, there's just a bunch of weird shit that I have no explanation for that I would have also thought had been patched out long ago. You've got the disappearing ladder that just phases in and out of existence at its own convenience, the invisible waterfall this dude is supposed to be hiding behind, this, the physics not obeying physics, and then everyone else just wakes up and runs off for no reason. They didn't come back, by the way. This clip doesn't go long enough, but I dropped down there and they just never returned. They were just gone. The main menu taking a full minute to load every single time I start the game. Yes, you can still navigate it without looking.
Okay, got it. If we're gonna get out of here, we need a ship.
Wait,
you can fly.
I had my gun, but I'm holding my gun. But it was in my pants, but it's in my hand. What?
And finally, the go fuck yourself. God, I wish I could have recreated this. It was so fucking ridiculous. Thus concludes the gameplay portion. Okay, I was originally going to have the story section be much longer, but then I realized I don't care. Summed up, the story's pretty simple. Jacob, our perpetually sweaty protagonist, and his co-pilot Max are running illicit items which turn out to be bioweapons. One of which has already gone off on Europa, another of which is about to go off on Callisto. Which is especially unfortunate because your ship is about to crash there because of this lady and her team who are trying to stop you from running what you're running. Pretty simple. On the way, they get a warning from the cargo hold. Jacob checks it out and oh no, they've been boarded. How they didn't notice another ship tailing and attaching to them and cutting through their fucking hull is anybody's guess, but there we go. He makes it back to the main cabin and locks the intruders in the cargo hold before opening the doors to the elements. But, before being sucked away, the girl gets a direct shot on my immersion. The glass separating the living quarters from the cargo hold on a spaceship is compromised by a single bullet. And there are no automatic shutters that close in the case of a breach, nor can the living quarters separate from the cargo hold, which is directly what leads to the rest of the entire game happening. Also, she blows the window out and all of a sudden the entire ship starts bursting into flames. Why? Our co-pilot is still in the chair. What is he doing up there that caused this to happen? It can't be the vacuum because that doesn't explain where the fire came from. So confused, and we're still on the intro. Oh no, he's dead. Well, rip Max, I guess. That didn't last long. Yep, she is alive. She survived this in a cargo hold that was open to the vacuum of fucking space, and the guy in the compartment designed to protect the people inside it didn't. I would love to know how she managed to survive when this was the last we saw of her. After a call with presumably the warden, you're taken in as a prisoner alongside Danny because fuck you, I guess. And by the time you wake up, things have already gone to shit. But it just so happens your cell door is busted open. How fortuitous. And there is no indication that someone in the game released Jacob on purpose, like Mahler, who's basically just the station doctor who works with you at the end of the game. And there is literally a plot point about breaking another prisoner out of their cells, so it also can't be that some override opened everyone's cells once the prison fell into mayhem. You just got extremely lucky. You go downstairs and meet Elias, who directs you to the control tower so you can free him. You get there, kill the dudes inside, and release him, but weirdly, the guys who attack you seem to mistake you for one of the monsters. Like, guys, Jacob's not that ugly, come on. Hijinks ensue and you end up going through solitary. By the time you get out, the security robots are back online and are killing everyone regardless of whether they're infected or not. And because I'm content to jump around the story of this game as I see fit, I may as well spoil the fact that this infection was released on purpose by Cole the Warden, because he wants an amazing specimen to evolve from the chaos so he can experiment on it in order to evolve the human race. So why is he allowing the robots to kill everyone? Those are all potential alphas, which is what he calls the prime specimen, don't laugh. He should be ordering them to stun and move prisoners back to their cells so they can be infected. No idea why he's allowing this. Maybe his justification would be that the alpha would never be able to be killed by those robots, but that doesn't make sense because at the end, you literally kill it by shooting it a lot, and he makes specific mention of the fact he believes Jacob has a chance, so that don't follow.
Final contest to determine the true survivor. Humanity or my out.
Also, at the end of the game, you run into a couple of these robots, and they knock you out instead of just shooting you in the head, because that makes sense. You know what, maybe they were being controlled by the doctor. Fuck it. Sure, whatever, moving on. You eventually get to the central tower where Captain Ferris, the man who brought you in, is trying to perform desperate damage control and save his men. He spots you, and because he has grip, it's not even a fight, so how do you beat him? Well, he throws you across the room, Jacob turns, and cuts the wires on the panel to open the door, and just lets the creatures kill Ferris, who just didn't stop Jacob at any point with his grip, despite using it to do just that for the rest of the scene. Jacob did his thing pretty quick, so I can believe it caught Ferris off guard. Either way, he's floor pizza, moving on to a slightly worse part of the game. When you meet back up with Elias, you're at the shoe, which is maximum security. And this is where I really start to hate Danny. Jacob opens her cell, looks inside, but doesn't check the obvious place beside the door where someone could be hiding, so she jumps him. And she locks him in, despite the fact the door was unlocked and she didn't go near the control panel after closing the door. I guess it just does it automatically. Sure, whatever.
Get me out of here!
What are you doing here?
What the hell is going on?
Did you know it was her? Is this who we're looking for?
Yeah, well, look, I just knew it was someone who could help us.
And why would I help you?
God, she's such a cunt. The only reason she's free right now is because of us, and she's already acting like an indignant prick. If she was even vaguely intelligent, then she should understand she owes us for this. Also, Elias walked up behind someone who clearly just locked me in here, unprompted, as if it's completely safe. Like, dude, she might actually try and kill you, and Jacob has reason to believe that she might. Yet he isn't telling Elias to stay back. Elias tells her he's got info on the place and that he can get her to the hangar, and then explains why they need each other and why she definitely needs Jacob. But she turns him down. Not big on trust, it seems. Fair enough, but from my perspective, she's still an ungrateful bitch who got our friend killed and has the gall to act indignant after we rescued her. She also says not to trust us, but offers no explanation as to why. So obviously Elias continues trusting us since we've already stuck our neck out for him and he's our lifeline. And so begins the part of the game where I think Elias might secretly be trying to kill Jacob in the least effective way possible.
One last thing. There's a trap in there to keep inmates from sneaking out.
What? Say what now?
Yeah, don't repeat yourself. That's definitely not crucial information.
On our way to waste processing, he explicitly warns Jacob of the fact there is a trap up ahead designed to stop escaping inmates, which is exactly what you are. But he refuses to offer any kind of explanation as to how it works. He just doesn't tell you. Now, this trap wouldn't really be able to kill anyone with the ability to react to incoming danger.
Well, I don't think that should have happened like that.
It's very slow, and the corridor it exists in literally has hiding places built into the side. But he could have still elaborated. For some reason he just didn't, and Jacob doesn't call him out on it. I guess he wanted the death trap to be a surprise? Okay. Then, once you finally get to Elias's escape route, this happens. Would have been fucking nice of you to mention that, Elias. Did Elias have that chain put there? Did he even know it was there? There's a massive chance Jacob could have missed the chain or just slipped straight off it. At this point, it is entirely reasonable to believe Elias basically just tried to kill me. With the amount of insane danger on that path that he didn't even try and warn Jacob about, I really don't see any other explanation. Elias says it was an escape route he'd been working on, but there is no way any sane human would ever see this as a viable escape route. This is where you send someone that you want to die, but Jacob doesn't even consider the possibility, even now. So you meet back up with Elias, and it turns out that Captain Fuckboy not only survived his fall, but has become infected as well. Also, yeah, that is Sam Witwer. Yay. For some reason, Elias gets launched like 10 miles out here when we were like a good couple of minutes walk back up the cliffs. I have no idea how. I'm not even questioning it. Anyway, he dies and Danny turns up and immediately accuses us of getting Elias killed, despite the fact she has no context for how this happened, but does know that I was only following his plan. Somehow she blames us, which, God, she's a cunt. Now, she knows that she needs Jacob to the point where she directs him to the hangar, but doesn't let him come along. She's actually brain dead. She even says later that she's surprised Jacob is still alive.
Didn't expect to see you again.
Which means Her plan was to call a spaceship down and then try and figure out how to pilot it on the literal fly on her own. I may as well spoil now that Danny hates Jacob because he delivered the virus that destroyed Europa and is now destroying Callisto. She is so blinded by her hatred of him that she's ruining her own chances of escape. Her being so constantly hostile is not only tiring because you have no context for why she's so bitchy, despite only spending a few minutes with her across the entire first half of the game, it's also almost comical because she's getting in her own way to spite Jacob. She also has no reason to distrust him as much as she does. He is a smuggler, sure, but she acts like he's a compulsive liar or something. Any amount of pragmatism would go a long way to getting me to like her. We are obviously in this together now. Could you please act like it? When you finally meet back up with her, she's just as hostile as ever, only now Jacob finally challenges her.
Didn't expect to see you again.
Oh yeah, what's that? Huh? You left me out there to die?
And you tried to kill me back on your ship. Guess that makes us even. You cunt!
Oh god, you boarded Jacob's ship with guns! How does she not understand that what he did was self-defense? What she did even got Max killed and she knows that. Even if we go with her brain-dead logic, she still owes us. She tried to grab Jacob on his ship, so he tried killing her by blowing her out the airlock. She then tries to kill him by shooting the glass and gets Max killed, so we're arguably even so far if we don't consider this a murder attempt. Because if we did, Jacob would be on top. Jacob then rescues her from the shoe, she imprisons and abandons him there, and the next time they meet up she leaves him for dead. Again. Regardless of how you look at this, she owes us. Big time. And I know, Jacob killed at least 4 or 5 of her men, but the reason I'm not mentioning them is because she never mentions them either. She clearly doesn't care about their deaths, which is why I'm not factoring them into this. Pretending we're even, just no. Jacob, with his infinite patience, keeps his cool somewhat and states the blindingly obvious.
I don't know if you noticed, but things have kind of gone to shit out there. Hey, you don't have to like me and I don't have to like you, but Elias was right. We don't stand a chance alone, but together we might just make it out of here alive.
Fine.
Oh my god, holy shit, she's finally accepting reality. It only took multiple hours and her leaving us for dead twice. However, despite this, once you get on the snowcat, she does not fucking improve.
Yeah, I can't see anything up there. So,
Don't fucking talk to me.
Everything Jacob has said so far suggests he doesn't even know what she's angry about. Confronting him would force him to address what he's done. Maybe Jacob really doesn't know what he's done in full.
What do you got there?
what we got here is none of our business. Now, come on. We got a job to do.
This was our fault.
You didn't deserve that.
Europa wasn't a terrorist attack. They doctored the footage to cover up what they were planning to test at Black Iron. And the cargo that we transported played a part in both.
Confronting him would at least let you get some of your issues out in the open instead of just being incredibly passive-aggressive. And passive aggression is really what rubs me the wrong way about Dani. If she were more openly aggressive, I might actually like her more, as paradoxical as that sounds. Her being passive-aggressive gives me the impression that she isn't actually that furious with me and that she's choosing to be annoying. She only ever attacks us pragmatically, and she's never furious with us. If she were openly hostile, I would at least understand that she clearly has a massive issue with me that's causing her to act irrationally. As it stands, it's like she's choosing to screw me and herself because she's dumb. Before going to the hangar, she takes a detour to Jacob's ship. She's basically looking for the virus he was transporting, but the security that got us at the beginning of the game must have switched it out for real medical supplies once they brought us in because it's not there anymore. Either that, or Dani really did just attack Jacob's ship and get Max killed based on an I thought so. However, I'm going to choose to believe the former theory so that I can continue to have a single percentage of sympathy for her. Okay, yeah, there's more dumb shit from this point on, but I'm done with the main game. I'm skipping right to the finale, because that's where the big issue I have with this story is. The ending of this game is dreadful. You meet the big boss, you kill the alpha, and the prison director reveals he's just a hologram, meaning he's probably been safe in space the whole time this was going down, and he decides to blow the whole prison up, so now you've got to get off-world quick. Which takes us to the last short gameplay sequence before the end of the game. You run to the escape pods. There is only one left and Jacob throws Danny in it, sacrificing himself to save her and dying as a result. Only, he doesn't die. The game keeps the fake out going for less than a minute before revealing that Jacob isn't actually dead. Mahler has activated the emergency core controls to slow the self-destruct and is now saying that there's another way off the station. At this point I sat back up and got ready to play, only for the game to end. I was expecting the catharsis of Mahler guiding you through a final mad dash to reach a secret escape pod or a hidden shuttle or something and get out of the base just before it explodes. You know, a final gameplay sequence, perhaps with endless waves of enemies requiring you to move around the enemies and clear paths rather than just take them all down. Perhaps the tension of this sequence could be enhanced with a countdown timer provided by Mahler, and if you fail to make it, you get a different ending. Instead, it just ends abruptly and leaves the player with a profound feeling of disappointment as you realize you played to the end of this game's story only to be given the message, "Stay tuned for next time," in place of an actual resolution to the story. There is a final chapter to this game, but it's paid DLC. I appreciate that they did actually make a proper ending, but why the fuck did you do it like this? If you release a game and then you release paid story DLC, I'm naturally going to treat it as an optional extra. Because by setting a price tag on it, you're intentionally gating it off from people in such a way that not everyone is going to experience it. Just showing us Jacob, presumably dying in an explosion and saving this for the beginning of the paid DLC would have been fine, because Jacob dying and Danny escaping can function as a clear ending to their stories for people who don't buy the extra content. Adding this in right at the end only to immediately go to credits is just clunky, because it makes you think there's going to be more gameplay, kind of like the fake out ending for Dead Space 2. But what this actually is the fake out ending from Dead Space 2 without the catharsis of knowing what happened afterwards. Unless, of course, you get the DLC. As it stands, if you buy the Callisto Protocol as it was released, this is the ending of the main game, and it's incredibly unsatisfying, because there is one simple fact that, as far as I'm concerned, completely ruins it. To cure Danny of the infection, Jacob needs a serum from the Alpha, and Cole, the warden, offers him a deal after he kills it, that if he gives up the serum, then he'll be allowed to leave via the escape pods. Jacob says no, saves Danny, and so Cole decides to blow the prison up? The Alpha is right there, it's dead. Just send men down and recover the body. You did it when you found the patient 0 for this infection, so why not do it again? Before activating the self-destruct, he tells Jacob to leave the serum and go. Jacob uses it, so the warden decides to blow up the source of that serum? Like, already, none of this follows. But it gets worse, because you've just screwed Cole over. Danny now has the serum in her blood. So why does Cole open the way to the escape pods after you've injected her? There is an explanation for this question that makes sense and utterly obliterates Jacob's sacrifice. Cole is likely monitoring them from somewhere in orbit, hoping Jacob will take the deal and leave so his men can pick the serum up from the prison. Now, Jacob doesn't take that deal, so Cole's next best option is to hope that Jacob sends Danny up in the pod, which would completely explain why he opens the way for you despite Jacob turning the deal down. He wants you to get to the pods because he's hoping Danny escapes so he can have her dissected like patient 0. The serum might be diluted, but it's still in her blood. These two sentient cabbages gave him exactly what he wanted because they didn't consider how Cole planned to get the serum. I don't even like Jacob, but it really does annoy me that his final action in this game wasn't to sacrifice himself to save Danny. His final action was actually to sacrifice her. Now, obviously he's not morally culpable for this because I can believe he wouldn't realize in the moment that Cole is probably tracking the escape pods. He did what he did believing he would die saving Danny, but it doesn't change the fact his sacrifice is moot. He does what he does at the end of this game to try and make up for the atrocities he's enabled, but by doing that he may have just enabled another one by giving them Danny to study. If a hypothetical sequel were made, I honestly think it would be a pretty decent launching pad for the story if you retconned it so that Jacob survived. You could have Jacob realize that he's accidentally given them Danny, and when another outbreak happens because Cole is still chasing his perfect specimen, we'd get to see a tortured Jacob dealing with the guilt of having accidentally enabled it in the same way he enabled the first two. Maybe, much like Dead Space 2, his hallucinations start becoming legitimately dangerous to him. One of the interesting aspects of Dead Space 2's story is the severe mental trauma chasing Isaac around Titan's sprawl, which is what leads to his attempted self-sacrifice to save Ellie. In this Callisto 2, you could even have a payoff where you find Danny's long-dead dissected body, still being experimented on, not only because it would work for shock value and to pile even more guilt on Jacob, but because it would make me so happy to see that character gone. I'm just saying. I wouldn't call what I just wrote fanfiction because I'm not a fan of this game, but it just goes to show that there is potential with this game's story. Unfortunately, the mental trauma Jacob has from feeling like he got Max killed is almost non-existent. Max only has a few appearances throughout the game, and most of them are jump scares. I wish I was joking. The theory I crafted about why Cole let them get to the escape pods makes sense, and it would add a tone that is about as darkly tragic as the DLC ending. That by trying to pay for your mistakes, you make everything so much worse. But there is a reason that Cole letting you get to the pods is never addressed in-game, and it's because the writers didn't realise that's what they'd written. This could be a cool plot point if they had actually realised it was one. As it stands, this ending is just funny because it has such a profound lack of care given to it. The game just ends with no warning and leaves you with the feeling that the devs were in a rush to get there because Jacob's story has no conclusion unless you buy the paid DLC. Which, spoilers, I don't know why you'd care, but spoilers. It all takes place in Jacob's mind, and he ends up dying alongside Mahler. If you just buy this game on its own, then Jacob's story ends in the ruins of the facility, not even realising that the main villain has probably gotten what he wants thanks to him. Dude, even just having Cole contact him to gloat about how Danny is currently on her way to him would be better than this. There's no meaning behind this. All it tells me is Jacob's mind is falling apart thanks to the implant in his neck. Him getting attacked after learning that Danny is going to be captured and killed by Cole would have meaning. At this point, he knows his decision to do the Europa job got thousands upon thousands of people killed in the outbreak. As a result, he tries to make amends by saving Danny's life, only for it to be revealed to him that his attempt to save her has done the exact opposite. If you're gonna have Jacob be attacked by a hallucination, which is what this is since we just killed Ferris, first off, why the fuck wouldn't you have it be Max? The vision that's literally been following us throughout the entire game. If that had happened, the Max jump scare would be justified because he is yet another person who died because of Jacob's decisions. And we know Max had serious reservations about the Callisto job and that Jacob pushed him into it. That would be a kind of resolution to Jacob's arc, that he tries and fails to make amends. It'd be a depressing fucking ending, but still an ending that you don't have to pay for. Instead, he's attacked after being secure in the belief that he just saved Danny's life, which robs this of any meaning it could have. It becomes just a completely arbitrary endpoint for the game. It would make more sense for him to see Max standing there uninjured because Jacob is finally coming to terms with his guilt, believing he saved her life. But no, boogly boogly, spooky jump scare ending. Good job, guys. That really takes talent. At the end of Dead Space, both in the original and the remake, Kendra, the only villain remaining, is dead, which leads to Isaac facing off against and killing the hive mind after returning the marker to where it came from and reburying it. Every major plot thread is tied up, but on the way up, Isaac gets suddenly jumped by a vision of Nicole. Did he live? Did he die? Regardless of the answer to that question, we have resolution to the story being told. The jump scare is well justified there because he just learned from Kendra that Nicole died before he even got there, so the guilt would have been piling on now that he's got a moment to relax. Callisto's ending feels like half an ending because Danny is going to be captured and killed and the game doesn't address it. There's no meaning behind the jump scare ending, a problem which would be solved by addressing the first problem. And finally, the game literally introduces a brand new, urgent plot point of there being another way off the station in the last minute of the game and then doesn't do anything with it. Unless you pay, which only reveals that Jacob ends up dying anyway. It's really bothering me, more than I care to admit, that they locked what they consider to be the ending to their game behind paid DLC. Introducing new plot points at the end of a story isn't necessarily bad, but introducing a plot point that needs to be immediately resolved in the very station you've been exploring the whole fucking game, which is about to be destroyed, and then ending abruptly in order to bait that theoretical sequence with DLC is just... ugh. No.
Ugh. Brother, ugh.
Having the Cole twist where he reveals his men are on the way to Danny would be fine because that's obviously going to be resolved in another game. But did you have to bait the DLC at the end of this game? Could you really not have just ended it instead of baiting more gameplay? So that's all I have to say about this game. I'm done. Bye. Okay, there's one more thing. I have to mention this. There was nowhere to put it in the video, but I need this to be known. What you're about to see is the greatest thing in this game. This makes it all worth it. It really is the little things. Everything I went through playing this game, all of it worth it. All worth it for this. Not even joking. I was so happy when I found this.
I'm sorry, what did I just see? What? That wasn't what I thought it was. Oh my god, there it is again. Horizontally moving 2D sprite rat. Oh my god. Did it just come out of the floor? I rated this game badly when this is in it. There's a reason that people don't trust modern games journalists.
Honestly, Jacob getting jumped by them makes her look even more incompetent, because it happens like 10 separate times and Jacob saves himself every time, but Sheen gets infected by one.